back from the break, and I'm talking about the history of rock and roll drumming to a certain degree, and I'm trying to name, the great drummers of the various eras of rock and roll. Last episode, I talked about the beginnings, 1950s into the 60s into the 70s, and tonight I am talking from there into the 80s and now, into the 90s a little bit. So, what am I doing here? This is a bit of a layered approach. That's a straight rock beat, right? Now I'll layer it up a bit. Now, that kind of playing started to come up with, the grunge era. Now, of course, when you're talking about grunge, there's obviously the Seattle sound and all that, and you can't go past Nirvana sort of thing for being one of the first to do that. So good old Dave Grohl with his great playing and stuff like that. But really, what I was sort of doing then was the kind of layering of beats and getting things a little bit funky. There's a bit of funk there. There's a bit of double bass drum. There's lots of virtuosic stuff from Herb Alexander. His Tim Alexander, his name, but he's Herb Alexander is his nickname. Herb from Primus from the early 90s. He wasn't their original drummer. I think it's Jay Lane was their original drummer, who's now back with them. But Herb Alexander captured every drummer's attention in the mid-90s, early to mid-90s. Some of the stuff that he did was just phenomenal, okay, and layered up different beats. So, as I said, you've got this kind of layered thing that I was just doing. One of the things that I really liked him doing was the 1995 album Tales from the Punch Bowl, where you had just some great tracks. Primus are fantastic for Les Claypool with his virtuosic bass guitaring and crazy humour and all that. This is fantastic. Lots of fun. And at the same time, incredible music to listen to. And some of the stuff, especially with two bass drums kind of thing, I've actually got a different size. I've got a 20-inch bass drum here and a 22 here. And I pumped my left bass drum a bit, so it's got this. So it's almost like a heavy metal hi-hat. Kind of thing there. So what you've got is a normal. Add the left side bass drum for this, and then play normally. Left foot's always holding on to the beat, sort of thing. So that's Herb Alexander, okay, and we're talking about the 90s now. Now I've mentioned this dude a lot, and I've mentioned the band a lot. The band Tool is a fantastic band that started in the 1990s. They are still going, and the drummer for them is Danny Carey. They are the band, the quote from the band in general is that if we can go on stage and sound like King Crimson, we're happy, or words to that effect. And I've mentioned Bill Bruford in the previous episode about prog rock in the 70s. Bill Bruford's one of the famous drummers for King Crimson and in that time. And essentially, Danny Carey of Tool gets very polyrhythmic with his playing, so he will bring in 5s and 7s and all of that. I do that a lot on the show. That comes from even pre-Tool into all the work I've done with Frank Zappa's music and stuff. Just being able, having the luck to be able to develop that up to, playing in bands that played the music of Frank Zappa throughout the 1990s for myself. And what happens is that Tool themselves, they're quite a deep band. They very interesting things, like their use of the Fibonacci numbers, which is an episode I did, mathematical sequence that I talked about a few months ago, about a dozen episodes ago now, I suppose, and different sequences doing different things. So a lot of Danny Carey's playing has got a lot to do with overlapping time signatures, like essentially he might be playing in 4/4, but the guitarist is playing in 5 or 7 or whatever it might be. And you get a lot of sequences going. So when you're actually playing, you could have a normal... Once again, I'm taking it, because I'm calling it rock, I'm going to take it from rock, okay? So I'm going to put things into a rock context. So if I'm going to go back to the normal rock beat... There it is there. Hi-hat on the offbeat, let's say. Now, jump into 16. Oh, sorry about that. Now, how about if I do a triangle, so? There's 3 there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You see? Boy! I'll leave that in. Now this is just a drumming... way of sort of explaining the compositional concepts of the band Tool. You can call it prog metal, and of course then we'd talk about people or bands like Dream Theater and all that sort of stuff with Mike Portnoy, and who's now left the band, and we have Mike Mangini, who's now the drummer for Dream Theater, and people like that. Now, this genre of prog metal that brings us up to pretty much now really starts to talk about these kinds of concepts where you're overlapping different rhythms and layering them up. Like someone's playing 4/4, someone else is playing in 3, and all of this sort of stuff, and you get what's called polymeter, which means 2 different time signatures played at the same time, like 3/4 and 4/4 sandwiched together. A lot of people just call them polyrhythms. Polyrhythms are basically 2 beats played together, like 5 against 2 or 3 against 2. Polymeters are like the sister of them, the cousin. It's all in the realm of polyrhythmic playing, but one's a beat and the other's a time signature. That's what goes on, sort of thing. And you layer them up. I do that a lot. That's part of a large part of what I do when I'm playing drum set music per se. And when I do that, I think more in a classical concept or a multi-percussion concept. So some people might think it's self-indulgent or something, but I'm not thinking basic rock and trying to make it complicated. I'm actually just thinking a whole other genre of music sort of thing. What I really find self-indulgent is someone who doesn't bother to learn more than about 4 chords and decides that their sad love song in G, based on their their girlfriend dumping them by text whom they met on an internet dating site is the next big single. I find that self-indulgent sort of thing. But that's a different frame. And obviously I'm a bit weird. So that's cool. I can live with that. I hope you can too. And that's what goes on. Okay. So there goes half my audience. And moving right along from that, you're coming into now, okay, the 2000s, okay.